Good morning, everybody. This is January's version of Talk of the Town. I'm Mayor Kevin Cole. I'm joined today by our city attorney, Darren Coker. We're going to have a little bit of a dialogue here in just a few minutes, but as we wind down January, it's the last opportunity to say Happy New Year. So if we haven't had the opportunity up until now, Happy New Year, everybody. What a beginning to 2025 as the ice storms and snowstorm last week and all the emergency operations that we went through and all of that great stuff. So here we are with our Talk of the Town, and we're going to get right into it because we have a jam-packed agenda. And so first off, I do want to introduce, like I said, Darren Coker is our city attorney. Darren, just a few minutes, just tell the folks a little bit about yourself and how long you've been with the city and all that good stuff.
Okay. As Mayor Cole said, my name is Darren Coker. I had the good fortune of growing up in the city and going to graduate from high school here, and taught high school for 9 years after that. After I got my college degree, I taught high school for 9 years and went to law school at night while I was doing that. Eventually came to the city to work in 1997 as the city attorney, and have been here for going on 28 years. And it's been a great run. It's been fun to be able to do that in the city where you grew up.
Well, so you've seen the city, absolutely explode and grow, and you've had your hand in a lot of the things that the city has done over the last several decades. But you've also just seen it explode. So, just what do you think about Pearland today versus when you and I went to school together? And by the way, by way of just being transparent, Darren and I went to high school together, and I graduated 1 year ahead of Darren, between Darren and his brother. So we go way back to high school days,
yes,
junior high days.
We do, and so. You see Pearland's obviously, you look at the numbers, Pearland's grown a lot. I remember when we moved here, the population sign said 6,444. And as you know, it's well over 100,000 today. So that's changed. But there are certain things that despite numbers changing, roads getting bigger, getting longer, new water lines, new sewer lines, all those things that come with a growing city, some things just don't change. And that's the people. Right. The people of this community have been great. Yeah. That's why it's been such an honor and a privilege to be able to grow up and work here both. And the intention, whether it's the members of the public, what they want, they still want the same thing. They want a sense of community. Mm-hmm. They want to be safe. They want to have good city services. Right. And the council wants to provide those things. That's been a constant over the years. So I like to look at the constants, things that don't change, right, even in the midst of change.
Right. Well, that's good. So let's jump into it a little bit. I brought Darren in today to kind of lead off. We've had a few questions, and there's, from time to time, there are various issues that kind of pop up, and there's a theme around it. And so I want to have the opportunity to just kind of lead with that. And number one, we're going to lead with the charter, and by intention, the charter is our guiding document, and so we're going to start this discussion today about the charter itself. So what is the charter, and what's its purpose, and those types of things?
Right. So when the city of Pearland reached a population of 5,000, they were eligible to become what's called a home rule city under state law. And at that point in time, once you become a home rule city, you can establish a charter. And a charter is essentially I think of it as a sort of a constitution for your city. It's a governance document. Mm-hmm. And that, I believe, was in 1971. Does that sound right?
Rings a bell.
Somewhere in that time frame that this occurred. And when I say a governance document, it establishes the form of government. For instance, in Pearland, we are a council manager form of government. Right. So we have a city council. And it establishes the number of council members. It establishes how they do business, the powers and the duties and the responsibilities of council. It also establishes some of the administrative departments of the city. So I could go on and on about the charter, but one of the things that's required by the charter is that periodically it has to be reviewed. Mm-hmm. And by the way, the charter was voted in by the public. It was approved by the voters of Pearland. And as a result, the only way that charter can ever be changed or amended, whatever that may be, is by the voters of Pearland. And so the charter builds in a policy of, right now, it used to be every 4 years that it would have to be reviewed. Right now, it's currently at 6 years. So every 6th year, and this is the 6th year, 2025, in January, a charter review commission gets appointed. And that commission will meet for 6 months, and they will review the charter, determine if there are any changes, recommended changes that should be presented to, ultimately, to the voters. They'll be presented to the council, and then the council would present those to the voters.
So, so that group, so how many are on that charter review commission? And talk a little bit about historically how that commission has been recommended, you know, the people on it versus the way we just completed that.
Yes. For many years, it was 5 members were appointed. Okay. It's now 7, and I'll get to that in just a moment. Those 5 members historically were appointed. Each council member would choose a person, and that person would then get appointed, and the mayor would generally pick the chair of the commission. In 2019, we increased that number to 7 members to reflect the same number of council members that we have. So there are 7 members, but this past year, we did something a little different. I know that at your recommendation, you wanted to open it up to the public as opposed to council members just selecting a person to be on the commission.
Right.
You recommended that we handle it like we do other advisory commissions or committees, and let's open it up to the public and then evaluate those applications and then select those members. And the council recently did this because the charter requires that that group be appointed at the first council meeting in January, and that's what was done.
Yeah, and I believe tonight they have their first kind of organizational meeting and will kick off and get started.
Yes.
Are those open to the public?
Yes, they are. They are. It's an advisory board, and so not all the elements of the Open Meetings Act apply, but even though we're not required to post those agendas, we still do so.
Right.
We post those. The public is entitled to attend. And you're right, they are meeting this evening. I believe it's probably from 6 to 8, and they'll be evaluating. Tonight, they're really going to be doing a lot of housekeeping chores and laying the foundation for the work to come.
Right. So just by way of, we'll close that out and we'll kind of move on, but just for the members of the public watching, we had 7 members. Of those, 2 members actually have experience on the Charter Review Commission before that. I believe they served on the 2019 commission. So it's real important that you kind of have that continuity from previous commissions to this one. A lot of the same subject matter will come through, and having that historical context will be important. The other 5 members have never served on a board or a commission at the city. So it was real important that we had that. We do have 2 members that have not served, but are well known in the community through the chamber and places like that. But then we have 3 members that literally, from a council member across the board, know very little about the council, and the council doesn't know a lot about them. But their resumes kind of speak for themselves in their backgrounds and those types of things to be contributing members to this. And also we have people from across the community, from east to west, you know, on the commission. So it was real important that we had people across the entire community to be a part of it. So with that, but a lot of times, you know, we've gotten some questions about the charter and the charter review. So we're kind of moving from that to ethics. You know, a lot of questions come up about ethics of the council, ethics of city staff, and just ethics in government is a topic that's kind of always out there, and understand why. But let's talk a little bit about the council and our ethics ordinance, our rules of procedure, what we can and can't do. There's been questions about, you know, we're engaging in all kinds of business with the city, and you know, all of this kind of, you know, fodder that kind of gets out there, you know, into social media. So explain a little bit about our rules and procedures and where state law comes in.
Okay. No, that's if I seem like I'm talking too much, just interrupt me. Because this is actually a sort of a three-tiered approach I'm going to talk about this issue on. So we have the city council rules, and that's approved by resolution. And it's sort of, there's several general statements about numerous different things in council rules and how y'all operate it at the meetings. And then we have state law, and then we have our council ethics ordinance. So I'm going to talk about all three of those briefly.
Right.
The general statement that's made in the council rules is this, and I believe you was provide some information, I think, on some things that have been posted. So there's a statement in that rule that says city officials shall not have a financial interest and shall not engage in any business transaction or professional activity or incur any obligation that conflicts with the proper discharge of their duties. Okay. As attorneys will always tell you, words matter and they're very important. And so when it says city officials shall not have a financial interest and shall not engage, because I prepared this, I can tell you what the intent is to be reflective of what is in state law and the ethics ordinance. And what that word engage means is you cannot engage in a public meeting regarding an interest in which that council member would have a financial interest. Right. And so that is addressed through the state law and the ethics ordinance that I referenced. Mm-hmm. So now let's transition to the state law. That's actually Chapter 171 of the Texas Local Government Code. And what that says is if a council member has a substantial interest in a contract or an item coming before the council, and you're saying, well, what would a substantial interest be? And I'll give you an example. For if a council member, let's say there's a contract before council, and a council member has 10% ownership of that business, or 10% of the voting stock, or whatever it may be. They have a substantial interest. Or if they derive at least 10% of their gross income from that business, they would have a substantial interest.
And it's them, their spouse.
Yeah, it's imputed to their spouse,
right.
Family members, parents as well, children.
Right.
And so what happens then is if that substantial interest exists, it's the responsibility of that council member to, one, under state law, file an affidavit that you have a conflict interest, file that with the city secretary's office, mm-hmm. and then the council member cannot participate in that public discussion. They have to remove themselves from the room. Right. And only the city council members that do not have that conflict can participate in that matter.
Okay.
Now, that's what state law says. The city wanted to go farther than that.
Right.
So when we drafted the ethics ordinance, Ordinance 1642, recently the council amended that to make it go stricter than state law. It says not only does the council member have to file the affidavit, remove themselves from the proceedings so that they can't participate, in order for the city council to approve that contract, it will require a 3/4 vote of those council members present. Right. And so if one member leaves and there's 6 members voting, it's going to require 5 out of 6 votes in order to approve that contract. And simultaneously, the council would have to make a finding that that contract is the lowest bid and that it is in the financial best interest of the city to proceed with that, despite the fact that a member on council who's not participating had that substantial interest in that.
So it's a double vote. So there's more bar to jump over, if you will.
Correct.
So then what happens with that disclosure?
And that was another thing. This was not required by state law, but it was included in the ethics ordinance as well. Mm-hmm. Actually, it goes beyond these. It goes with any disclosures, conflict disclosures that are filed by council members, campaign finance reports mm-hmm. filed by council members are to be put on each council member's. There's a link on our webpage to each council member's, disclosure page. Right. And so any disclosures that are filed, whether it be campaign finance disclosures or conflict disclosures, they get posted on there, so the public has access.
So it's immediate transparency. You don't have to make a public information request for them. You don't have to do that. They're right there. And in fact, in the legislative session this year, there are several bills that have been filed to do exactly that across the state, that all cities will do exactly what we're already doing. And that's putting those finance reports up there for anyone to see, and they don't have to make an open records request. Same thing with conflict disclosures. So it's interesting because if you go and look at my page, you'll see all of my financial reports. In fact, we just had to submit a financial report on January the 15th. So you'll see that latest report, and you'll also see a conflict of interest that I had to file. This was probably 2 years ago, I guess it was, and it was not something that I had a financial interest in that company, but I had done business with that company in the previous 12 months. And so just by way of being transparent, you know, I'm in the real estate development business, and I use engineers and other contractors, you know, through the time. And I remember the name of the engineering company that I've done, you know, lots of business with over the last decade popped up on the agenda. I didn't even know they were being considered for a contract. And next thing I know, I see them on the agenda. I came to your office and I said, "Hey, I've done business with this company. What do I need to do?" And I think you advised me, you know, have you paid anything to them in the last year? And I said, well, as a matter of fact, we have. It's been almost 12 months, but not quite. But I've done business with them, and so your advice was, and it wasn't the 171, it was another disclosure form.
Right.
So explain why we even go to, I mean, that's a state law requirement. Explain that part of it a little bit.
When you say which part do you want me to explain again?
I don't even have a financial interest in that company, but yet we had to file the disclosure.
Yes, there's actually another provision that's not in state law that is in our ethics ordinance, and it requires a disclosure if it's a business that you may not have a substantial interest in, but you did at one time, or you had done business with them, and it involved a payment of greater than $12,000, or I believe $10,000 or $12,000 within the last previous 12 months.
Right.
And if that occurred, then you still have to disclose that as well. Again, that's something the state law doesn't.
But again, that's going above and beyond. Yes. It's not a substantial interest in that company, but doing business with them and paying invoices, you know, we disclose that. So if you go and look at my page, you'll see that. And, you know, that's what those types of things, you know, are meant to be transparent about. And I think that's the key here, is just being transparent with what's happening so the public is aware. And those types of things.
And just so the public knows, as soon as an election is done, we get a new council member. Right. One of the first things that occurs is I sit down with those council members and we do a 2-hour training just on ethics, conflicts of interest, and how to handle those situations. And again, that's right after they're elected. It's part of their onboarding process. And so the council members are very well aware of it. So
you work behind the scenes with all of our staff, you with product procurement and those types of things, because things come to the agenda. When does council get involved in any product procurement? How do they get involved?
Well, very limited council involvement. So obviously each year the council adopts a budget, which says here's the direction for the next year, which includes, you know, we're going to go out and purchase this, or we're going to build this, whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And so those are budgeted funds. Now staff has their direction. So staff really does the bulk of the work. The council doesn't really see anything until it comes to council for approval of the bid, to award a bid. Right. And just generally speaking on bids, just bids 101, there are other nuances for different types of projects, what we call alternate delivery forms. But generally speaking, you do competitive sealed bids or competitive sealed proposals. And what happens is staff will go out and develop the specs for a project.
So let's take road repair.
Right.
We've been engaging in doing a lot of road repair. We had a package go out several months ago, $3 million or almost $3 million, and those types of things. So staff developed a scope, this road, this road, this road, this road, from here to here, and all that. We want to mill and overlay and base repairs and those types of things. So they put that scope together, and then chances are they put that out for a sealed bid. And so how does that work moving forward?
Okay.
How does that firm get selected?
Okay. So this is all governed by Chapter 252 of the Local Government Code. It's very specific in what happens there because we go out to a public bid. We're required to. Okay, we can do through an interlocal cooperative, but generally speaking, for competitive sealed bids, it goes out to public bid. We receive those bids. Those bids are evaluated by staff to make sure that they comply. Do they meet the specs that were or the scope
Right.
of what was published in the bids documents?
Right.
Were the bonds provided that the contractor is supposed to provide? All those things are in there. Then they evaluate those bids. If it's a competitive sealed bid, we are required to grant that bid to the lowest responsible bidder. That means the person who met all the requirements and doesn't have anything that would make them not a responsible bidder. The other form of bid would be a competitive sealed proposal. Similar process, we go out to public bid, but what we do is we put weighted criteria. It's going to be for the best value of the city, not necessarily the best price, but the best value based on weighted criteria, based on experience, financial wherewithal to perform the project, maybe their staffing levels to be able to accomplish the project. All these different things are weighted.
Right. And so if we went against that, what's the penalty at state law if we violated that?
So are you talking on the competitive sealed proposal or the lowest responsible bidder?
Well, either one.
Either one. So lowest responsible bidder, if they're a responsible bidder and we don't give it to them, that's actually a Class B misdemeanor under the local government code.
So it comes with penalties to the council if we
Absolutely.
moved away from that. Right.
Correct.
And your job is to keep us out of court, correct?
Absolutely. So far, 28 years.
So far, that's been the case. So, okay, so let's switch gears a little bit into, we have a lot of public meetings, a lot of things that go on. Obviously, we have council meetings, and so there's been some questions about our council rules at our meetings and relative to the public and what can and can't be said, how it can be addressed, and those types of things. And, I like to look at this. We have my goal in running those meetings is to make sure that we keep proper decorum, that we're professional, that we're respectful amongst each other, as well as with the public and our staff that's there. And likewise, we want the interactions between the public to us and even the staff to the council, that it's all professional, it's all respectful. We can have disagreements, we can have different thoughts, but we shouldn't be, name calling and getting into derogatory comments and those types of things, because this is the public's business. And so we want to make sure that we keep proper decorum. But with that, we have people that come to speak to council. So we have our rules for how you address council and those types of things. Most of that, though, is set forth in state law. Is that correct?
It is,
Yeah.
and but everything that's set forth in the state law is sort of balanced by, of course, an individual's rights as well as the city council and the city's rights to be able to govern and conduct a meeting. And so, let me just say a few things about that. At the root of this issue, when it comes to public comment at a meeting, it's paramount that the public have the right to be able to speak, because what you're talking about essentially is you're trying to balance. Because there's the individual right that a member of the public has to speak in a public forum like that.
Right.
And then also the governance issue, the city council, they have a right to be able to conduct meetings with decorum and make sure that it flows and that things don't interfere with the meeting.
Right.
And so the state law has come in and 551 of the chapter 551 of the government code sets forth some requirements if you set rules for your council meetings. And most cities in the state of Texas have rules. If you go online, you'll find them. They're very similar to ours. Some are a lot of them are stricter than ours. But when a member of the public comes in, you have to balance that. Again, the city council conducts a meeting, but not at the expense of an individual's public right. At the same time, that goes both ways. You can't do it at the expense of the ability of the government to interact and conduct their meetings.
In other words, somebody can't completely disrupt a meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
So the rules that, when the government code speaks to this, and the Texas AG has issued numerous opinions on it, says, yes, you can develop rules. They have to be reasonable and narrowly tailored. And those rules can, for instance, set time limits on speakers. Obviously, you can't go on for 4 hours of just public speaking. So, most rules are usually 3 minutes in most cities, and that's what it is. And so the members of the public can come and speak for 3 minutes. We actually go farther because under state law, the members of the public are generally, we're required by law to allow people to speak on items that are posted on the agenda. We go beyond that and we just have a general comment period for people to come and make comments about things that aren't on the agenda. Come back to that in a moment. But when you have the rules, though, the rules have to be narrowly tailored and promote a governmental interest.
Right.
So the rules cannot discriminate against opinion. They cannot prohibit criticism or sharing those opinions at a public meeting. They just have to be done so with a certain level of decorum, because the chair is given authority, even under state law, if there are comments are made, for instance, obscenities, vulgarities, things of that nature, the Attorney General has opined that would interfere with that public meeting.
Right.
And could lead to a breach of the peace. And as a result, that can be stopped. Right. Or if somebody is defaming, making false accusations, and defaming somebody through slander, that can also be addressed through a meeting and ask a person to cease that.
And that as the chair in those meetings, I mean that's a very weighty issue. Fortunately, I've never had to call on one of our officers to remove somebody or even give kind of that ultimate, you need to refrain from that, or, somebody will remove you. There's some key phrases that have to kind of play in there. So fortunately, that hasn't happened in the last 4 years since I've been the mayor. But every meeting, we may have somebody speak or we may not. Like this past Monday night, we had a gentleman speak about some road repair in his neighborhood, and I believe there's a package that's being developed right now that will address that. And so he was addressing, and he asked the question like, when is this going to happen? And again, dialogue is important too. This was not something that was on the agenda. Now, we always ask if it's an agenda item, like if you're speaking to new business number 3, you can sign up to do that. And what we do by way of procedure is we'll hold that comment until we get to new business item number 3. We'll put it on the table for discussion, and then we'll ask the member of the public their comments. They can go to the podium and move forward with their comments. If it's 1 or if it's 3 or 4 or 5, whatever. But under general comments, if somebody's not addressing an agenda item, that's where they get their comments, and that's where this was. It was not on the agenda, so we could not dialogue. Talk a little bit about why we're prohibited from having that dialogue. But number 2, I answered his question with, I believe there's a package that's making its way out, and I'm going to put you in touch with our Director of Public Works, who's here. If y'all will step out, he can give you more specifics, set up by way of contact, so we know and can handle that question. Because I think it's important for me that if somebody has a question about their city and they come to a council meeting, I want them to get an answer as quickly as possible. At the same time, I want to make sure that we do it within the confines of the law, because I don't want our council or anyone on our staff to be even unknowingly go in and violate the law, right?
Right.
And we get into a dialogue situation. The next thing you know, we're in an open meetings violation. So speak a little bit to that reason why we can't have that dialogue.
So you have to look at the Texas Open Meetings Act, and what it does. The intent of that is to say to the public, when we have a public meeting, we have to post notice of the time, the place, and the topics to be discussed.
Right.
Those are the only things that can be discussed when you have a quorum of council there present. So that's what's currently happening. So when those agendas get posted, that is the whole intent of that is to give notice to the public. All right. If an item is not on the agenda, we cannot discuss and have deliberations for that. And I'm going to refer to Section 551.042 of the Texas Open Meetings Act. It's entitled Inquiry Made at a Meeting. Inquiries about a subject for which notice has not been given cannot be deliberated about. Specifically, it says any deliberation or decision about the subject of the inquiry shall be limited to a proposal to place the item on the agenda for the next subsequent meeting, or a general statement of specific factual information given in response to the inquiry. In other words, what you did the other evening, specific statement of fact. We have a member of staff here who can step out in the hall and address some of your questions and get information for you on that. Right. That was an appropriate response. The council could not engage in a deliberation regarding that issue because the general public had no notice that issue, I believe it was in West Lee, it was dealing with drainage or the roads there. Yeah. And the general public had no knowledge of that. If that had been a posted agenda item, they may have wanted to be there.
Correct.
And so that's why we can't deliberate on it.
And we could have had discussion amongst council about that because it would have been on the agenda to do so. And so, we've got a member that's chimed in here saying that basically everything we're saying here is against the law.
Okay.
And I mean, we're stating, here's what the Texas Open Meetings Act states we can and can't do. We go above and beyond the law. The law states that all that is required to post and have a meeting about is the agenda.
Right.
There are cities who say if you're not speaking about an agenda item, you can't speak.
Correct.
And we don't want to do that. So if somebody has an issue with the government, if they have an issue with me, if they have an issue with council, or if they have an issue, just in general, and it's not on the agenda, they can come and address that issue. We just ask that they do it in a certain fashion with rules of decorum. They limited to 3 minutes and those types of things. But we're not going to have a dialogue because it's not on an agenda.
Right.
Now, we can set an agenda item. In fact, I think some part of the law states that really the only comment that somebody could make is, well, we'll set that for an agenda in 2 weeks.
Right.
And have that opportunity. So we do operate within the law. We do operate within the Constitution of our state. And somebody can have a differing opinion on that, and that's okay too.
Exactly. That's the one thing I've learned in all the time I've been here.
Yeah.
Not everybody will agree with you, and that's okay.
Right.
That's okay.
And that's okay. But and as the mayor who runs those meetings, my biggest issue is making sure that we run them efficiently. I always start on time as much as we possibly can. I think because I think it's the public's time. If we post a meeting at 6:30, I want to start at 6:30 because that's what we've said we would do, and it's the public's time. So if they're there at 6:30, I want to get started on time and be respectful of people's time. At the same time, people want to come and have redress with their government. We give them that opportunity, and we just want it done in a respectful manner, and we will be respectful back. And I think that's that we work out very well that way. So, Darren, I want to thank you for your years and years and years of service with the city. I mean, you've done a great job, and I appreciate the time and effort to come in here today. We address some of these concerns, but it pays folks to make sure that you have a good city attorney that really understands not just the law, but the application of it. And as you can see, there's sometimes a needle that we have to thread to make this work right. And what I hope is when people come to one of our meetings, it's seamless. That you see a good, robust meeting and discussion and those types of things. But at the same time, it's if you're injecting yourself a lot into our meetings, there's usually a problem. And if we're asking you a question, that's one thing. But if you're having to get on to us and say you've gone too far there, then there's a problem. Right. And so my goal is to be pretty seamless through a meeting where we're not going, well, what does the law say? We should never be bringing that up. I just want to run seamless through. At the same time, address people's concerns and those types of things. So I want to thank you for coming in and helping us today. I'm going to move on to some of the other questions. I know we've got quite a few here. I do want to address, right now, there's been a lot of questions. Obviously, every time we meet, we address road repair. And road repair is one of those things that is ongoing. It will be ongoing. And are we ever going to do road repair as fast as anybody wants to get done? Never will. I'll just tell you that way right now. It's never going to be as fast as somebody wants it to be. But we do have a package that's out on the street right now with some road repair. Joe, are you able to pull up the condition index? There we go. There we go. So if you look at the condition index right here, you can find this actually if you go to engineering on our website. If you go to engineering and streets division, click on streets, you'll see that. So real quick, Joe, go to filter by road rehab plan. Yeah, right there. Number 2, 3 to 6 months. Okay, that's a package that's out right now working. You can see, or excuse me, this is a package that's actually going to the county. So this is a package that has veterans on it. You can see there Woody. There's Woody up towards Orange. You've got several roads that are going to be rehabbed. And so you see those colors. You see yellow and you see red, and you can see over to the side, you know, they're in very poor condition or poor condition. And that is a condition index that's been placed on each one of those. So I know we had several questions about Woody specifically. I've had some questions in the past about Cherry right there. Those are going to be in a package that it's my understanding that should come to council for final approval here in the next meeting or two. And this is a co-op that we're doing with our county. So this is your county road and bridge dollars coming back into the city. We put some dollars in it for material, and the county does the work. Veterans is in that same exact package. You can see that there. Go back to the filter, click on number 1 real quick. Exit that one and go to number 1. Back out a little bit. Oh, where'd it go? Oh, I think there's one that should be in process. Yeah. I'm not sure where it is. Yeah, do 2024. So we had a council, a gentleman that came in and spoke to council about neighborhood down here, Wesley. So we had done some drainage work in there, and we needed to come back and redo the roadways there. So that is actually a bid project that should be coming relatively short to rehab the streets within there. Somewhere on the filter, Joe, there's it's the most recent one that had McLean in it, and I'm not sure where that filter is. Yeah. That's the one coming up. Anyway, so this website right here is one of your best. Go to filter by capital improvement. Right there. Okay. So this one is important because you'll see some roadways on here that trying to see fight some of the others that we have are put into our. In fact, Hatfield should be on here because Hatfield's going to be redone as a portion of a drainage project. The voters approved a drainage program here a few years ago, and as a result of that drainage project on the tail end of that, we're actually going to be coming through and upgrading Harkey to a four-lane concrete curb and gutter as opposed to the 2-lane asphalt that's there now. So a lot of people ask about the pothole and pothole repairs, you know, why aren't we keeping up? So we're trying to keep up as best we can, but at the same time not overdo and spend too much money because we know it's going to come right up and out of the ground, you know, here pretty soon. So I continually ask people to be patient on road repair. It's frustrating myself when we see it. But all total between the drainage projects as well as the $3 to $5 million that we put into road repair recently, and that will be coming out of the ground over the next 5 years, we'll probably spend somewhere in the neighborhood of $25 million on road repair. Since we're talking about roads, one of the questions was specifically about Smith Ranch Road. That was recently awarded, I believe, in one of our first January meeting to complete that widening. That was a road that most of that cost is being borne by the federal government through HGAC. And as such, it has more hoops than you can imagine to jump through. And as a result of that, it just took forever to get the environmental review. Hopefully, with the new administration in DC, we can cut some of the red tape on environmental review. I'm not saying that we shouldn't do environmental reviews and those types of things, but many times these projects sit on a desk literally for months and months and months and months. In fact, I asked one of our Senate members, a member of their staff, it'd be nice to see what we call a shot clock. And they have X amount of time to review and push it out. Without it, we're going to go and build the road and get it going. We can't wait on all of that any longer than we can. There was a question about lighting on Smith Ranch Road.
Oh, and just for
yeah.
everybody at home, the magic of television. Obviously, I'm not Darren Coker. We did a little switcheroo there. So
Josh did a switcheroo
yeah.
and came in.
Yeah, there were a couple questions about lighting and street lights and
Yeah.
speeding. So I wanted to see if you.
Yeah, I was going to try to holistically do that. The Smith Ranch Road question, as we go through construction, I think it's a great question. We'll have to work through with the contractor and the construction management folks on what can we do if we try to do some temporary lighting and that type of thing out there. But typically, our roadway projects like this, on the tail end of it, we will be installing street lights as a result of that project. But what I don't want to do is make that project any more expensive. I don't want to make that project any longer than it already is going to be. So let us work with engineering and the construction management team on if there can be some additional lighting added to that. In addition to that, there were several questions about just street lights in general on specifically some of our older roadways, as
Fight
this
was one of
like Fight Road and I think McLean Road as well. And so again, some of these we're going to have some work being done soon on some of the road repair. But we have I've already asked the question with staff. We have an allotment of street lights that we can obtain through CenterPoint on an annual basis. So give us an opportunity to research how, where, and when we can do that, and we can place some additional lighting in some of our corridors. So give us a little bit of time to figure out that process and how quickly we can get some of those done. And I don't know what the allocation is. Obviously, we've grown as a community, but even if it's a handful in some of these places will do a tremendous help.
Well, and that's one of the things that, when you talk about the interconnectivity of government, the street lights are on our street, but they're CenterPoint street lights. Right. And so, not to say it's a them, not us, but it adds a layer of complexity to making it a reality. Right. Unfortunately, we have good working relationships with them. We want safe roads for sure.
Well, and to that point, I mean, somebody goes off a road and hits a street light. You'll see this, Pearland Parkway, and this is a pet peeve of mine that drives me nuts.
Running into street lights or other people?
What happens when one gets hit? and so one gets hit, and you see the damaged light, and it just sits there.
Yeah.
And it sits there, and it sits there. And so I've been asking CenterPoint. I get the fact that you
and they do get reported to us.
They get reported, and
we send them to
CenterPoint. And CenterPoint knows the light's out, but it might be 6 months before that light gets replaced.
Sure.
And so I've been asking CenterPoint, is there any way to come and get the damaged light? I mean, pull it out, get it going, so we don't have this metal just sitting on the side of the road, because it's ugly, and get it removed in a quicker amount of time. And if it's another 3 or 4 months before somebody, comes back and installs a light. I get that. That's fine. But can we do it in 2 steps? So I've been working on doing that. But like we had a light on Pearland Parkway over here that was damaged shortly after Beryl, all the way back in July. And those new light poles were just put in, within the last month. So 6 months later, and we're getting that. And I get it. They're a large company, lots to do after an incident like Beryl and those types of things. But so give us some opportunity to figure out a little bit of this program about how we can deploy some of this, these annual takes on lights and help some of our older roadways. Also note that as the city expanded, from east to west, and a lot of these older roadways that we're talking about were old county roads, and the city, has to take on maintenance of those. Most of those had very little lighting to begin with, and we just need to see what we can do to deploy some of those lights to make some of these corridors better.
So let's stick on streets and on Pearland Parkway. So there was a question about why were the trees that were shown on the approved plans not planted on Pearland Parkway next to the new parking lot at the high school?
And honestly, I read that question, and I wish this person would reach out to us and clarify a little bit more where they've seen, because we've got trees in the median, so I'm not sure exactly where they're talking about. We have trees in the median on Pearland Parkway. We have trees in the median on Euler Drive.
Yep.
And they're talking about Pearland Parkway, so they're talking about Pearland
It's got to
High
be
School.
Pearland High School, yeah.
And that parking lot at the Rig was expanded when they expanded the visitor side of the Rig. So I'm assuming it's that, but we have, and it could have been an artist rendition of the Rig with some trees thrown in there, but I honestly am not quite sure what they're referring to here.
We'll reach out to the commenter and ask for follow-up information on that.
Sorry, guys, real quick. Mayor, your mic's cutting in and out, so we're just gonna hot swap.
We're gonna hot swap mics real quick. This is the magic of television.
So did you
but
turn the
live.
other one off?
Yes, sir.
There we go. Sometimes equipment doesn't work the way we expect it to. Shadow Creek Ranch, speeding drivers. Our main streets are within the within the subdivisions. We need more police presence and speed breakers.
Speed breakers.
I presume they mean
Maybe they're talking about speed humps.
Speed humps
So might put back in there. That would be something. If it's speed humps, I will tell you this. One of the most divisive things that you'll ever see or do in your community is to install speed humps.
Yep.
And so we have a traffic calming device policy at the city. So if somebody wants speed humps within their neighborhood, we require them to go do that legwork, not build it, not construct it, not that.
But get the support for it.
But get the support for it.
Sure.
So they would need to present a petition to the city equal to 75% of the affected area. So people who live in that affected area would have to sign on to that. We have done it. We have seen that happen. But typically speaking, it's very divisive in a neighborhood. And what we don't want, we just talked about decorum at a council meeting. What we don't want in a council meeting is for the council to be the arbiter of a neighborhood fight.
Yep.
And so we put it back in their hands to go and get that information, bring that forward. We have a traffic committee at the city that then ultimately reviews that.
Yep.
But I will tell you, the traffic committee, without that petition, without the others, is not going to recommend speed humps. They're going to wait for that neighborhood to come forward.
And there are other potential solutions. So it's not always patrolling. And the city does use a data-driven approach, the police specifically, to assign patrol officers to areas where there are known.
So complaints.
Yep.
So call in complaints.
Yep.
That's going to be part of the data. So ramp up complaints of speeding and those types of things. And that will help with additional patrols and additional visibility.
Yep. And so the traffic calming committee is the appropriate mechanism for that. And they do meet, I think, on a quarterly basis? Monthly basis. And it's a combination of PD,
Public
the
Works.
traffic division, Public Works, to
Fire.
make sure that they're doing the best things for the majority of the community. Next one, why do we have misspelled street names? Not just the sign, but it's wrong on the map too. Example, King Arthur's Court, so not Arthur's Court. Is that street named after people who write books? That's a great question.
It's a great question, and I will tell you it's printed that way because that's how the developer presented it to the city.
Right. So we just represent the information the way that it's platted in the first place.
Right.
Yep.
Right. Now, having said that, I think there's been where we have misprinted a sign. That's one we need to look at and see if we didn't misprint a sign.
Right.
But typically speaking, street names and the way they're spelled are a function of the developer.
Yep.
And if that's how they wanted it, that's how we printed it.
And
But
we have
need to-
those plans.
Yeah, we just need to look at that one and see if that sign's.
I want to go drive that street now.
correct.
I'm really
Yep.
curious about that.
Exactly.
It'd be a good place for a library.
Yeah.
Hey. The community, we're going to switch to parks real quick. Community passed a proposal for Independence Park to be updated and upgraded. And all that was proposed and not completed, and is not completed. When will it be done?
So I'm not quite sure which proposal she's referring
I'm thinking
to.
the bond,
Well,
the 23 bond.
so if you go all the way back to '07, there was a master plan for the park that was created. And then phase one of that was put into the 2007 bond program.
Yep.
And that's what you have currently out there. No, it's not the entire plan, but it's phase one. Secondly, in 2023, here a couple years ago, we went to the voters on phase two of that, of Independence Park. And so if they're referring to that piece of it, I believe we're in just starting the engineering.
Right, we're just about to go into
You know, beginning, and so that whole bond program, you're not going to do all of those projects immediately and overnight.
Right. We just don't have the capacity.
We don't have the capacity to do it, and it does have a hit on your tax rate if you accelerate those projects too fast.
Because we sell the debt as the projects
Correct.
come online.
Correct. So each one of those projects, the whole package, we stated to the voters that our goal is to have all projects either started and or completed within a 5-year period. So 2023, 2028, we will have that project certainly started here sometime probably in the next year. The other thing that I asked for, because the park portion of our bond program that year was very narrowly approved.
Yep.
I believe it was literally like 52-48 or something like that.
Yep, that's about right.
And I stated that we as a government, we as a council, we as a staff need to be very mindful of those 48%.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's a little different if you have projects that pass 65-35. I don't want to sit here and say we don't listen to the 35. We should.
Sure.
But when you have a bond program that's bigger that way or passes larger that way, it's a little bit more of a quote mandate. Here, I didn't think we had a quote mandate on the projects, right? So we wanted to make sure that we're engaging with stakeholders and in fact find a couple of people who voted against the project and put them as part of the stakeholders about what some of those issues are and making sure that we're doing what's right in that project. So phase two of that project is, I think we approved the design contract here recently, and so it's making its way through.
Awesome. Pickleball is a fast-growing sport,
Yep.
and the city needs more outdoor public courts. Availability of the 2 courts at Centennial Park is often an issue, especially on the weekends. Painting pickleball boundary lines on one or more of the city's existing tennis courts is a low-cost solution. What is the city's plan to increase the number of outdoor courts?
So we just mentioned Independence Park.
Yep.
I know one of the proposals and one of the things that they're looking at for this second phase of Independence Park is to increase our presence in pickleball.
And you know, it's one of those things that you know, we see it in some of the other plans, you know, especially in renderings. It is certainly on the minds of people that want the community to be active, but that'll be exciting to see for sure.
Yeah.
I do have a last page of questions,
Okay.
and they kind of bounce all over the place, so
Okay.
sorry I didn't group them together as well as I could
It's
have. can we get an illuminated crosswalk on Fight between the north side of West Oaks and the south side of West Oaks subdivisions? I believe this is right near.
Probably reflect, I don't know, illuminated meaning lit
Like
up?
probably light up when
or
you cross?
Are we talking reflectors? If the commenter if we can reach out to
Yeah.
them and ask a little
Yep.
bit more clarification about what they're asking, that's certainly something we can take a look at.
Yep, we can
and-
take that to traffic as well.
But also at Fight at what?
Fight, it's West
Harkey?
Oaks, between the two sections of West Oaks. I think it's near.
It's towards the Dad's Club there.
Yeah,
across.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
I got it. And I think what they may be talking about similar to what we have over by Centennial
Yep.
Park, where there's a crossing there going to the splash pad, and that may be what they're talking about.
Lawhon. It's near Lawhon. Jeez,
No,
sorry. Or not Lawhon. C.J.
it's
Harris.
Carlson. So
I'm going to name all the schools until I get
yeah,
it
the
right.
whole thing. So if we can just reach out to the person
Yep.
who asked the comment for clarification, so we know exactly what they're talking about. That's something should be easy to look into.
Yeah. When can we get some added patrol in West Pearland, particularly Shadow Creek? So I think we kind of already addressed this a little bit with traffic calming, but
it's resources, it's people, and it's tax money, and so we have patrols on the street. I don't know specifically what they're looking for. We have additional patrols in that area,
Yep.
but West is a big area. Now I don't mean that it's a big area. I don't know if they're talking about something specific. I don't know if they're just talking in general, because we have more patrol west than most areas of our city because of DDAX and some of the other stuff.
Yep. The
So
data-driven approach
the
to
data, yeah. So I would reach out to the requester and
To
say,
crime.
is there something a little bit more specific that we need to look at? We can put them in charge or in contact with PD and maybe get a little bit more specific data.
Yeah, sounds
To
good.
them,
But
yeah.
they're
Good question,
for
though.
PD specifically. To the mayor's point, they take a data-driven approach to crime. So they look at where the hot spots are, and they optimize efforts based on that. We also, in addition, have a real-time crime center and drone as a first responder.
Right.
So leveraging the technologies that we have access
Right.
to be able to respond more quickly and more effectively to calls and situations.
Yeah.
Next one, this is about Pearland TV. Question about Pearland TV. What is the cost and budget for that program? Why is some of the programming so old? And can this program be live on YouTube through the City of Pearland page like council has done? Who maintains the station and programming? I do. No, I'll answer this question. It's part of the communications team and part of our responsibility. So the municipal channel that we have, when you become a home rule city, you have a requirement to live broadcast your council meetings to make sure that they're accessible to everyone. The live streaming that we do on YouTube is just a value add because we have the technology available to do so. The way that mechanism works, for every cable subscription, there is a franchise fee that's collected and it goes back to the city that supports the channel. Those monies, it's called a PEG fund, Public Information, Education, and Government. Those monies can be used for capital outlays that support the PEG channel and have a lifespan of over 12 months. So this studio, for example, was a PEG eligible expenditure because this content does go on the channels. Cameras,
monitors.
right.
Right.
Computers that we use for editing and things like that. The only thing it can't support are the staff members. So we have a team of 7 total. Not everybody works on the PEG channel, but a handful of us do, and in sort of bits and pieces. So our team handles the website, social media, calendars, public meetings, a number of different things. So a fraction of our time does go to supporting the PEG channel, which does come from the general fund. But the majority of our expenditures and the things everything we can, we buy through PEG funds so that they don't impact the tax rate or tax base. Excuse me. And as far as the programming is concerned, we do a variety of original content and syndicated content. So we try to develop partnerships with our local museums and with cultural art type things within the community. And then we also purchase content from Texas Parks and Wildlife. And our goal is 24 hours of unique programming that you don't get anywhere else. We go in on a quarterly basis and audit all of that content and try to refresh it. So you'll start to see it get stale over time. Some of the PSAs that we have in there are sort of evergreen, so we let them run. And then we rotate in our public meetings as well. We have a duplicative live stream that can go on Facebook or on YouTube. Sorry, we stream our council meetings on YouTube, but a lot of our syndicated third-party content has copyrighted music in it. We own the copyright to the content because we purchased it from somebody else, and we have it on the cable channel. But YouTube doesn't recognize that, and they'll flag it and pull the stream down.
Right.
And if that happens too many times, our YouTube account will get suspended. Thus, we won't be able to stream our meetings on YouTube, and we do not want that to happen. We've seen that happen in other municipalities, and it is an absolute nightmare.
Right.
So I hope that answers the question. Next one. It's disappointing the developer was unable to complete the project behind Academy. In the future, is there anything the city can do to get assurances that a developer has the ability to see a large project through to completion?
So what they're referencing, and this is actually kind of a sad situation, but they're talking about in Shadow Creek on Business Center Drive. There is a 3 or 4 story building that's partially built. It's an old city, it's an old, the old plan was an assisted living center, multiple story, had a memory care, single story behind it. The memory care is actually weatherized in and all of that. The vertical is not. So depending on who you talk to with the developer, so the developer passed away mid-project now probably 2 or 3 years ago, maybe 3 years ago now. And the bank working with his widow, she's not a developer, didn't know what to do, how to liquidate or how to get somebody else involved, and unfortunately lost it to the bank, which is very unfortunate, and it's a very sad situation. But having said that, there's detention in place, there's water and sewer in place. I sound like a salesman. The impact fees have been paid. So there's a lot of things that are already there that another developer would not have to do or pay for.
Sure.
I know we've had 1 or 2 groups actually take a look at it. The city would waive all, not design fees, review fees, because it's already been paid and done if they built the same plan.
I see.
In other words, we have the plans.
Yeah.
Plans are there. If somebody just picked it up and built
Just
the
got
same
to find the
plans,
right person to do
they
that.
they could advance that forward. But the problem is going to come in is the multiple story building. It is not weatherized in, so the heat, cold weather, and everything else, the chances of mold in that building are probably high. So somebody's going to have to really take some environmental look at that before they did that. Or it's going to have to come to the ground.
Yeah.
It is zoned for the assisted living center by right. Anything, it's in the BP 288, portion of our zoning in that particular area. So we've had several people take a look at it. We just haven't seen anybody go under contract with the bank.
Okay.
Right.
Um,
Very unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why does the city pay less attention to the west side of Pearland when it comes to services? That's all there is to that question. So I think we're going to have to follow up to get further detail.
So we built a new library.
Yep.
We've got a large
Very large sports complex.
sports complex.
We
out
actually
there.
have the only native wetland in
Right.
Pearland is right there.
We've got the trail system on Clear Creek
Yep.
out there.
Our largest fire station.
So I'm not sure what services they're talking about, but let me address something real quick, and this may be what they're talking about. Let's talk about rec center and auditorium. Okay. So, because I was a part of not only this one, but at the same time we were having the conversation with this one that we've got on this end of town. That was a cooperative with the city, the EDC, and Pearland ISD. And so we actually asked Alvin ISD, because we were doing one with Pearland ISD, if they had any thoughts on, and we were told no. We were told no. And so we didn't advance that direction.
Okay.
So if we built another rec center out there, that would certainly have to go to the voters, and the voters would have to approve it. So
Sure.
I'd like to know a little bit more about what they're specifically talking about. But there's as far as services are concerned, fire, police, those types of things are throughout our community. Water, sewer, drainage throughout our community. It's newer in that direction, so your development has done a higher criteria than you had in some of the older neighborhoods.
Sure.
Because the criteria have changed over the decades.
Yep.
So your drainage is a little bit better than most people on the east end of town, especially the older neighborhoods. So I'd like a little bit more clarification so we could know.
Yeah, Joe, if we can ask for a follow-up on that, just for
And,
us
and,
to
just,
expand on it.
and since we're talking about east and west, it's kind of funny. We're one community.
Yep. One continuous.
So do I need to say anything else?
No, I don't think so.
We're one community, and I hear, for every person that I hear, you don't do anything on the west end of town. I hear somebody on the east end of town going, you don't do anything on the east end of town. And notice I said end. That's by design. We are one community. We're connected. We have an east end, and we have a west end. We don't have an east side and a west side.
Right.
Sides denote negativity, division.
A dividing line.
Dividing line.
Yep.
We have an east end and a west end. We're all connected. What happens good or bad on either end of town affects the whole.
Yep.
Period. As far as services are concerned, we try to do everything we can throughout the community
Sure.
to make sure that people are equal. Now, again, I addressed Rec Center and Auditorium and where that asset went because of the partnership that it went into. At the same time, do I need to duplicate a sports complex that's in Shadow Creek on the east end of town?
Sure. Yeah.
And who bears that? Taxpayers do.
Right.
So let's be careful in getting into that dialogue.
And
east
it
versus
is.
west.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance. You know. I mean, it's
we're
a
one
very sensitive
community.
thing.
Yeah.
Yep. This one's specifically for you. Can Mayor Cole attend the Turner High School Bingo Night on February 8th? It supports the PTA and Project Graduation 2025. I don't know what your calendar looks like, but
I can. I have an email to it. haven't
I
had a
guess you
chance to get
can.
back.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
So go get your tickets. And then the last one. When will the pool at the natatorium open back up? This one's easy.
It's been open for about 6 weeks.
It's open now, and it is. I mean, fantastic. Actually, council just did a tour of it this last Monday.
Yeah, 2 days ago. And I will say the swimmers, divers, and everybody, I mean, as soon as they went in the water, came up going, oh my.
World of difference.
World of difference.
And you can't see much, but if you went through there during the rehab phase of it, all of the filtration systems, the replastering of the pool, I mean, it was a lot of work.
The biggest change that a swimmer is going to see is the clarity of the water.
Yep.
Right. And the filtering.
Because it's not going through sand filtration. It was
Yeah,
going through sand filtration before, and now it's
the
going
new
through.
new filtration system is worlds of difference better. So it's open. Like I said, it's been open I think 6 weeks or maybe even 2 months now. They get open right before Christmas. So
We should have a cannonball contest over there.
go ahead.
All right, well, that's all the time we got. If we had any other questions or anything, we will follow up with you all. And Happy New Year. Glad to be
Happy New
here.
Year.
Looking
Yeah.
forward to 2025.
Yep, and we'll resume in at the end of February.
Yeah, sounds good. We'll see y'all next time.